I am joined today on the podcast by Kym Kearney. Welcome.
Hi, thanks, Emma. Thank you for having me. Quite honoured. This is kind of my first podcast. So there you
First
go.
podcast experience. I'm very honoured. We are going to talk sort of broadly about your career and sort of specifically about I was going to use the word pivot, but it's so overused, isn't it? The pivot from being a marketer to a marketing recruiter. But before we get to that bit and kind of the, I guess, thought process and sort of decisions behind that, let's go back to the beginning. Did
All the
you
way back.
all the way
Yeah.
back? Did you always know that you wanted to go into marketing? Were you kind of clear on that sort of coming out of school and when you started first thinking about your career choices?
No, I wish I could say yes, but I definitely I had no clue that marketing even existed as a career, really. It's probably great to start. A great starting point would be taking you back to, I guess, how it evolved. For me, I was raised in the country in a little town called Mooroopna. So it's very, dairy farming country. And back in those days, we didn't have career counselors at school. Like that just wasn't a thing. So I kind of grew up believing that you could either be a hairdresser, a doctor, a police officer, or, a farmer. So for me, all I kind of knew and my real passion point was that I loved interacting with people. And I had this urge to kind of help them with their lives. So for me, it was in my DNA and certainly, kind of a big part of who I am. So after loving psychology at school at year 12, I kind of thought, all right, well, maybe that's a direction for me. So I headed to Melbourne to study psych. And so for me, I was just always going to go the psych route, right? Mind you, my other kind of favorite subject was graphics, and I was really good at that too. So I had the creative side of my brain that, I really enjoy that creative side. So before studying psych at uni, I actually interviewed, funnily enough, it's such a random thing now when I think back to it. I interviewed for an advertising course at RMIT, and I quickly had a massive reality check in terms of looking at my portfolio against all the other candidates that were kind of going for the same spots. It was definitely out of my league. So I kind of realized then that creativity for me could be a passion, but certainly not like a career. So I kind of get off to uni. I go psychology in Melbourne, and remembering I come from the country, so like I'd really only been to the city.
Yeah.
Oh, massively, right? I had literally been to the city probably 3 times in my life before I made the move to go. And so mum and dad put me on the V-Line service. So packed my bags, got on the train and headed to the Big Smoke. Dad, bless him, he's a bit of a bargain hunter. He kind of equipped me with, and I remember literally sitting on the V-Line across from this lovely man who kind of tried to make small talk with me for 2.5 hours. But I had a case, or what do they call it, like a slab of tin cans on my lap the whole way with, I remember having this, the tin opener on top. And the whole journey, I was holding these things with me, clearly wanting to save a few bucks. My dad had bought these cans that didn't have any kind of wrapping around them. So there was literally no labels on them at all. And I remember coming home from uni each night to kind of like a Russian roulette dinner where you'd go, okay, I'm going to open something, and whether it's, tin spaghetti or tin peaches, that's what I'm having on a uni budget. So that was fun times in getting to Melbourne. But where literally marketing for me, and getting back to your question, and sorry, I do waffle a bit. I kind of like to chat.
Telling a story. I love a good story. I'm all about
it's a story.
it.
Story, and marketers are storytellers, right? That's
Absolutely.
what we do. That's what we do. So anyway, I literally fell into marketing. It wasn't something I had planned. It was really something that found me. So genuinely, as I said, I had no idea what marketing was, let alone that it existed as a profession. So at the end of each of my uni years, I was really lucky to, get a gig at Asanda, which is part of ANZ. So at the end of each of those uni years for 3 months, I would work for them. And each time I worked for them, they'd put me in different divisions of Asanda. And one year I was just fortunate enough to be placed in the marketing department, which was honestly, for me, it was virtually love at first sight. It was such an aha moment for me where I went, here's something that I didn't know existed that seems to tick every one of my boxes. So it was genuinely like just incredible. So I guess that for me, my understanding of people and my genuine customer lens really combined beautifully for my passion with creativity. And I guess that's where the psych training really leads in
Yeah.
beautifully, is that kind of understanding that buyer behavior and what makes people tick. It felt to me like a real advantage to being a great marketer and the perfect kind of segue into the field, and it was super complimentary. So that's kind of how I fell into marketing.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think it's the same, certainly the same for me, and I think the same for certainly the vast majority of people I speak to. This idea that, you get to sort of 17, 18, and you're somehow magically meant to know what you want to do. Maybe not for the rest of your life, but, for the next kind of 10, 20 years or whatever. And it's so hard I think a few people, might feel called in a certain direction. They've always wanted to be perhaps a nurse or doctor or lawyer or something. But for the vast majority of people, like, how do you know? And so I always think those degrees that do have that element of actual placement and going into the workplace as part of them is just such a great idea, because at least you get to kind of try it. You get to go, okay, do I like doing this? Or something you might assume something is one thing from the outside, but the day-to-day reality of that role is completely different. And you go, oh, actually, it's not what I thought it was. It's not for me. Without that, I think it's quite hard to know. Like I was the same, I didn't have a clue. I wanted to be a stockbroker. I was like doing economics, politics, and philosophy, and I was like, I'm going to go and be a stockbroker, which now seems like quite a ridiculous thing. But I guess that earlier version of me, that's what I thought I wanted to do. So once you'd kind of found marketing, and as you say, you kind of felt like you'd found your people, and this is it, like
Yeah.
this is where I want to be. How was it when you then left the uni world and went into the world of work? How did you find it? Was it what you expected? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I guess a good way to answer that is probably sort of talk you through my
Yeah.
career and
Yeah.
kind of how it evolves. Again, accidentally, but how it evolves. And just
Often
on
the
that,
way.
it's funny because I think we were raised in a generation where you kind of year 11 and 12 was so important because you had to make a decision as to what the rest of your life would look like career wise. Whereas the generation today, and I have a year 11, my eldest is in year 11, and I think these days it's very much of the opinion that you can kind of try new things, and that's almost encouraged where it wasn't in my day. Certainly it just wasn't
Yeah, no, it
encouraged.
wasn't
There was
for
so
me
much
either.
pressure to really set up your whole life at the
Yeah.
end of year 12. So yeah, so after my psych degree, which I loved, by the way, I really loved it. A full-time marketing job came up at Asanda, and so I jumped at that. They called me, they said, "We love you," and yada yada. But with that came more study. So I went from an undergrad straight through to my postgrad, and that was at night. So I'd work all day and then go to school all night. So effectively, I had no life, absolutely had no life. But I ended up leading that marketing team as the national marketing manager for their funding and investments division. So, and look, and I've always believed if you can successfully market debentures, then you can pretty much market anything. So it wasn't the sexiest of products, but it was certainly something that I enjoyed, and I learned a lot from that experience. So then comes, like, after that taste of the corporate kind of finance banking world, I deliberately decided to make the move into retail. I'd heard from fellow marketers that it was really easy to kind of get pigeonholed into industries, and I just wasn't going to let that happen. I was eager, I was young, and I had lots of passion. So I spent the next few years heading up marketing for the national book retailer Angus and Robertson. So, and this was a brilliant role. It was the sexiness that I'd kind of been looking for, and retail was just was just so refreshing. It was exciting. It was fast paced, and look, I thrived on building that customer connection with the brand and creating like above the line, below the line campaigns with my team. And I got the experience of working with fabulous agencies. And what I really, really enjoyed and appreciated in this role was the exposure I got to how to run a retail business and how that operates on a day-to-day basis, because I was part of the leadership team, the senior leadership team. So it enabled me to get a lot of business acumen, and that really built in that role too. And I, watching those daily numbers come in and seeing how your marketing campaigns actually affected those numbers is truly something that just, it gets you going. It floats your boat. And that excitement for me was, I was really, really fortunate about that. But look, and this certainly shows my age. If I hadn't sort of hadn't kind of mentioned, some of the oldness before, you'll certainly pick up that I'm a bit older than a lot of the recruiters out there now. But in those days, digital marketing and particularly social marketing just wasn't a thing. It just wasn't around. It wasn't around. We're all about brand building and, your TVCs, your printed catalogs, radio ads, in-store promos and, point of sale, that kind of thing. But leading my own team was really something that brought me so much joy, and thankfully something that I seem to be naturally good at. So, helping others to be the best versions of themselves is what it was all about, and something that I truly loved. And again, the psych training and my passion for people was, it was there, and it was something I was doing on a daily basis. So there, after that, I headed to Ticketmaster, and Ticketmaster, it was brilliant. But the first 3 to 6 months of that role was incredibly challenging for me. So the entertainment industry, I found out, is really quite a tight and tough nut to crack. So you kind of really have to prove yourself. And thankfully, I was able to do that. So, and then that role ended up being my favorite by far. I forged these really long-lasting relationships with my clients, and they were built on, trust and a deep understanding of their customer base, and ultimately being able to deliver results for them. So, we delivered custom and tailored marketing campaigns that were actually based on consumer insights and consumer metrics and understandings. And, that's kind of my happy place, right? I was just really fortunate. I hear people say, those Sunday night blues that you get when you're sitting and down and watching a TV. I just didn't have those, because I was excited about what was to come in the next week. Because as all marketers know, no 2 days are the same, and every day is different. And for me, I really loved that kind of variability that came out with that. And so solving, customer needs made me really happy, and I found that whole thing really rewarding. So, and then I felt pregnant. I fell pregnant with my daughter that I was talking about, that's now in year 11. So for me, it was kind of a bittersweet moment. I was kind of at the pinnacle of my career where things were just on the song, and I was flying and I was feeling great, and that confidence was there, and I'd built up those relationships, and I'd kind of earned those relationships. So then it was off to be a mum, and really that is a role that I've had always dreamed of. I'd always wanted to be a mum. So yeah, it was a bittersweet moment for me. And then I guess let's fast forward. I had 3 kids, and I went through a pretty crappy divorce. I don't know many people that go through a nice divorce, but that was certainly a very low time in my life. But, like everything, you kind of, rise again, and you toughen up, and you learn a lot from that process. So after that, I took on 2 part-time marketing roles at the same time. So one was a sole marketer for a landscape designer, which meant that I was the only one in the marketing team. I was responsible for strategy, but I was also on the tools. And for me, that was a real initiation by fire into the world of digital and social. And the other role was working for a marketing agency. So for the first time, I was actually on the other side of the client fence. And juggling those two roles together was kind of tricky enough. But coupling that with, homeschooling 3 primary schools
Yeah.
kids during a pandemic, it's certainly not something I would recommend for anyone. It wasn't the smartest idea, and it was a tricky time
Yeah,
to
I
say the
bet.
least. So,
Yeah.
and then lastly, so my final, I came to my senses. I decided I was going to consolidate both those roles. And my last official marketing role was in the outside school hours care, working for a private equity company. So if I thought I knew what pace was before this role, I was wrong. I was just wrong. It was nothing for me to see, midnight every night. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. We achieved a lot and I had a fab time, and it was a fab team, really. But it did kind of take a toll. The multitude of hats that a marketer is expected
Yeah.
to wear these days is just phenomenal. And I think marketers are truly a special breed. And I take my hats off, all my hats off to each and every one of them. It can be a tough gig at times. So that's kind of my nutshell career summary.
Awesome. I love it. And it's really interesting. It's really interesting hearing you talk about it, knowing that now you've, well, not entirely stepped away, because obviously it's still very, very interlinked, but you're not 100% a marketer anymore. So it's quite interesting to hear you talk about it so passionately, and all the things that you kind of love about it. And your face lights up as you're kind of telling those stories. So it's really interesting to understand, I guess, what changed, or what, maybe change is too strong, what shifted, or what was it that kind of led you to start to think, actually, maybe I'd like to take these highly transferable skills and do something slightly different. Can you talk me through that sort of thought process? Because I assume it's not something that kind of happens overnight. It's something that you're probably thinking about for a little while. Talk me through it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a decision you make quickly, but opportunities and actions are all about the right timing and mindset.
Yeah.
And for me, it all sort of came together a couple of years ago at a point in my career and my life where kind of all the moons aligned. I felt like, you know, where I was at work, the company I was working for, they were going through some changes, which is inevitably what big companies do. But I felt like I'd kind of got to a point in my marketing career where I'd achieved what I'd set out to achieve. So that was certainly something. But I was also, again, as a single mum, raising 3 kids on your own, I was kind of looking for more flexibility in my day to allow that quality family time. And like I was saying, like I was burning the candle at both ends. I was up all night working, and I kind of really wanted to have something for myself that allowed that flexibility in my day. So, and I was ready. I actually was ready to be more of a risk taker. And that is not something I have really ever been in my life. I have been someone that's saved for a rainy day always, and just always assume something, needs to come up that you've got to be prepared for. That's kind of me. But I was ready to be more of a risk taker. And I think that's mainly due to the fact that I had recently lost my brother. And that really, like any loss, it
Yeah.
impacts you in such a way. But it really made me sit up and remember. And it's a great reminder that life is so short. And it really propelled me to get out there and make the most of it. So in a way, this is a gift that my brother has given
Yeah.
me, which is a
It's
really
a really nice
lovely
way to
way
think
to
of it.
think about it.
Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
interesting, and I've experienced it myself in other ways, that it's often those really extreme life events that kind of force us to actually stop and question and say, is this actually what I want to be doing? Is this actually how I want to spend my time? And whilst they're incredibly valuable and important questions, and like you said, it's a lovely way of thinking of it. It's a lovely gift that your brother left you. But it's also, I don't know, it does also frustrate me that it's only the extreme things that actually kind of tend to push people to think like that. It's, much rarer that someone has a major kind of change or shift in life trajectory just through reflecting. I don't know, maybe it's kind of a human nature thing. We need those big, extreme, shocking events to kind of jolt us and make us view things differently
Yeah,
sometimes.
it's a
Which,
really
as I
valid
say,
point.
yeah, it seems like a bit of a shame. I wish we could all do that without the without the heartache that invariably,
Oh, the
was the
heartache. Yeah.
catalyst. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you could just make those changes without that part of it. But as I say, it doesn't seem to be. I don't think we're built that way as humans. Did you when you sort of were starting to think, I want to make a change, I want to do something different, as you mentioned, wanting to take a risk. Did you, I guess, instinctively kind of know what you thought that was gonna be, or were you kind of going through different ideas and trying to work out what would fit you best?
Look, all I really knew is that I wanted to stay in marketing, but I kind of wanted to do it on my terms. So that was my starting point, I guess. But actually deciding on recruitment,
Mm,
for me, that really came about because that underlying urge to help others was still building and building inside me, and it was getting stronger and stronger. So and funnily enough, a few years back, I just so happened to re-partner with a northerner from the UK who is in recruitment himself. Yes, 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 yes. And he was literally constantly in my ear saying, Kym, you need to be a recruiter.
mm,
This is your thing. You'd be really natural at it. It just feels right. And so he really was a big catalyst in me starting this business, and he's been a brilliant support. So I probably wouldn't have done it without him. So for me, there are just so many clear synergies, and I know we've
yeah,
touched on these before but marketing and recruitment, they just combine so
very similar.
beautifully, and
Yeah,
it just made perfect sense. So both are understanding buyer behavior and knowing what your customer needs and wants are inside out, and really spending that quality time getting under the bonnet and understanding what drives them and what their motivations are. And it's really about building those long-term relationships based on, reliability and your consistency, but being authentic and really gaining that trust. I mean, trust is, as we know, it's everything,
yeah,
right? So, and the creativity is there in how I get to now market my own brand and how I go about finding the best of the best talent. But that is creative. And so
yeah.
it's just a brilliant combo. Brilliant.
How how do you find the shift from marketing someone else's product or service to now marketing your own brands like that? I think that's
Yeah.
quite challenging because it's you now. Like, it obviously feels very, very different, but
Yeah.
how have you found that? How has that been for you?
Can I say I love that there's no red tape. There's no having
Yeah,
to go up the line. There's no
decision by
waiting.
committee.
Yeah, 4
Yeah.
months for something to come back. And then no, it's a great idea, Kim, but we're not on it.
Mm,
It's me. And so there's been a lot of reflective time for me to come up with my own authentic brand. And anyone that knows me, all my besties, like I'm a bit of a nutbag, really. And I like to have fun and I don't take myself seriously. I take work seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. So this brand that I've been able to build is not just about me, but it's about I get to choose now really great clients to work with, and I get to choose really great candidates to represent. So I'm in the driver's seat now, and everything I do is a reflection of who I am. So it's the most important brand I've ever worked for,
mhm.
but it's the most rewarding as well.
It's such an interesting shift, that, isn't it? And just as you've said those words, it resonates very much with me. So I'm in a similar situation with what I'm doing, and there is, I agree 100% with what you just said, but there is a real kind of inbuilt vulnerability to that, because it is you. It's not
Yeah.
some, hypothetical abstract. You are the brand. It's you. And as you said,
Yeah.
there's a lot of positive things to the fact, but that's also, slightly scary because it's
Not
you.
slightly, hugely, hugely. It's huge.
Hugely. And you're putting yourself out there. How has that been for you? Like, talk me through that.
I am so out of my comfort zone, Emma. Like, I'm literally posting things on LinkedIn. I was never a LinkedIn fan before I started my own business. And you kind of have to be now. It's that storytelling, that it's that connection piece. And LinkedIn for me is super wonderful. It's the best thing and it's the worst thing, because I
Yeah.
have to put myself out there, and I talk about my kids, and I talk about my struggles, and I talk about things that I want to share with my audience so that they can understand who I am as a person, because I haven't been a recruiter before. It's, but with that, it's quite refreshing, right? Because my marketing lens, I've been the client, I've been the candidate. I know what you guys want, and I can add real value to that process. So, yeah, and I don't have set ways that some recruiters might have. It's a fresh approach, and I'm just hoping that it lands with my audience, that they can see that I'm real and I'm honest and I'm a hard worker and I've got a family to support and I'm just like them. So
Yeah.
it is, it's scary, but it's
Yeah.
working.
And I also agree with the point you made earlier, that there's a lot of synergies between recruitment and marketing. In many ways, recruitment is marketing. As you said, you are
Yeah.
marketing those candidates to that client. You are marketing that client to those candidates. And obviously the psychology background that you mentioned as well is a massive part of that. The other thing that you said that really resonated with me, I spent whatever it was, probably 15 or so years in the end in recruitment, and the thing that I always found frustrating, I guess, was that a lot of people in recruitment saw recruitment as a very transactional activity. They
Yeah.
were sales driven. And like you, I wasn't. I was people driven. And actually I think that's ultimately what made me good at it, was that I
Yeah.
cared
Yeah.
about the people. And but it's that distinction that you drove there, saying, or sorry, drew there, saying that for you it's about the people and it's about the relationships. And I think that is such a differentiator, because I think the recruitment industry has changed a lot, but there's
Yeah.
still a fairly substantial percentage of people in the industry. I think perhaps less so actually in the creative and marketing space. I think perhaps sort of other verticals more so, but there is still that very sales driven approach in there. And it just always, yeah, it just never sat well for me. I just think it's the business, it's about people. It's at its most
It's
basic,
always about
simplest
people.
level, it's about, and you can't, I don't think you can't remove that. And if you do, you're not selling a pen. Like, it's funny
No, no,
actually.
no.
I
This is
remember,
people's lives we're dealing with,
exactly,
right?
yeah, and big
Yeah.
decisions for them. Where you choose to spend the vast majority of your time is a big decision. And I think if you lose that human aspect, I think it's a real. I think when people often say that they've had negative experience with recruiters, I think 9 times out of 10 it's based on that transactional element. It's that type of experience that they've had. The other thing that I think is really interesting, and again resonates, is your point about you've been on the other side of the fence. So I often use the phrase in recruitment of what good looks like, and particularly when you're dealing with marketers and building teams, and you know exactly what good looks like, because you've built your own teams, you've hired your own people. I'd imagine that that's an element that really lands with clients that you work with and that you're talking with?
Oh, absolutely. Look, anyone that I meet with, they see the value straight away, which is a really
Mm.
lovely, it's not a hard sell at all,
No.
which is what makes it feel so right as well. So while I consider myself a generalist marketer, my teams were mostly made up of specialists who were clearly experts in their areas, right? So while I haven't necessarily been a digital specialist or a graphic designer, although I would have loved to had RMIT accepted me, I've always worked incredibly close with these people. These people have been on my team and I know exactly what their role involves. So that certainly gives my recruitment clients and candidates confidence that I'm able that that I know what I'm looking for when I partner with them
Mhm.
and they see such value in what I can offer in this search. So it's incredible, and even some of my clients have got to a point where they're using me to help structure their teams.
Yeah.
So, because I've had, close to 25 years experience in senior marketing roles, it's my USP, right? So it helps build rapport with them, but it
Mm.
also, they're kind of using me in different ways now too, to
Mm.
kind of, think through their strategies and stuff. And I love that I love it. I'm still in marketing. I really am still in marketing, which
Yeah.
is brilliant. Yeah.
Do you this is going to sound like a strange question, but I often have conversations with marketers who are thinking about potentially maybe going in a slightly different direction, or like you said, they sort of feel that they've achieved what they set out to achieve. They maybe want to do something different, but they're not quite sure what that is. And one of the things that I often sort of think and say at that time is there's so many transferable skills kind of baked into marketing. It is so broad. What are the transferable skills do you think that, using yourself as the example, or a or a hypothetical 20-year
Yeah.
marketer, what do you think those kind of transferable skills are that people kind of have to draw on?
First and foremost, as a marketer, those hats again, you're wearing so many hats and you are juggling so many balls. So you're super organized, you're ambitious, and you're able to hit the ground running. Like you've got energy and you've got passion. That understanding, no matter where you work in whatever industry, whatever field, it's about understanding your consumer, your customer,
Mm.
and what it is that they're needing and wanting. So, understanding those pain points is something that marketers are really aware of. And, working out ways to help with those pain points is
Yeah.
certainly, something that you can take into any area. The fact that working to tight deadlines and under pressure is certainly skills that you can take
Yeah.
anywhere. And like I said, being part of a cohesive team and that teamwork and that ability to work with others and as part of a team, that's certainly skills that you can take with you too. And great communication. Marketers
Yeah.
are often very, very good at communicating to all different types, walks, ages, and, being able to market yourself because you have been marketing others for so long. I think that definitely gives you a head start in how you approach that, next step for you in terms of, marketing yourself as a marketer is one thing. But if you want to go into different areas, that's fine. But you know how to market yourself. So give it a crack and back yourself because they're just being a marketer is it's incredible and it comes with so many gifts that you can share regardless of what industry you work in.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and I think it comes back to this. I was having this conversation with someone yesterday that if you're very good at something, if something comes naturally to you, it's easy to assume that everyone's like that. Well, this thing that I'm good at, well, surely everyone can do that. And sometimes we don't realize actually that that's our secret sauce. Like that's actually the thing that makes us unique. And that thing that we think everyone does, they don't. And that's actually a really kind of key differentiator for you. It's interesting
That's
because
a really good point.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it is, as you say, as marketers, you know intimately how to market a product, a service, but sometimes when it's you, it's a little bit harder to see. I think often, again, I just think it's a quirk of human nature that we often can't see what makes us unique or special or different,
And I
which
think it's those moments. Oh, sorry, Emma, I
no,
didn't
no,
mean to
you
cut you
go.
off then.
No, no, go.
And I was kind of correlating it back to those moments of grief or big moments in your life. That's when people tend to reflect. And
Yeah,
that's when you kind of look at those things and maybe identify some of those points that you've just raised about
yeah.
recognizing those little bits of gold that you have versus someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said before, it's so I've seen it so many times, both, in myself, friends, clients, across the board, that it's often those kind of extreme events which, at the time are obviously, like we said, heartbreaking and extremely difficult and, uh, you know, horrible, but you kind of come out the other side and you are changed and something is different. And actually those really difficult times have ultimately been quite pivotal in where people have ended up. It's yeah, again, I think it's this almost cruel quirk of kind of human nature that we need those things sometimes, just as I said before, jolt us or change our direction. You were
Protecting
talking,
mechanism in a way, right?
yeah, maybe that's what it
Almost.
is. You were talking before about some of the positive things of having, your own business and the positive things that it's given you. But, like anything, it's not all sunshine and roses. There are pros and cons. What are some of the things that perhaps you weren't expecting or sort of hadn't thought about that have been a bit more challenging?
This for me, some look, like all good things, great things take time to build and grow. So
Mm,
you have to be quite patient. Patience is, I'm patient with my kids, but not necessarily with myself. I've got quite big expectations of myself. And that's where that consistency and commitment and nurturing relationships is really important. So if you're going to start your own business, you just have to give yourself a bit of breathing space to do that. There's also no off switch. There's just no off
yeah,
switch or knock off time, right? So working for yourself, you're always on call and you're always contactable and always putting in a shift. So, days where you could walk in the door from being in the office working for someone else and you came home and you could put your feet up or you could, don't get me wrong, I still got that balance. I can still get out there and do my exercise and bits and pieces, but the phone rings at all hours and you pick it up. And also coming off a set wage for me to not necessarily knowing where your next dollar is coming from takes some adjustment. And not just adjustment in terms of your back pocket, it's adjustment headwise and really getting your mind around the fact that you have to earn your next dollar in ways that you haven't had to do before. So, and being realistic about what that looks like. I would never have started this without, some funds tucked away that enable me to kind of really build a business properly from the ground up rather than just kind of shoot at the hip. And like I said before, not being a recruiter before, I kind of thought that that was going to be a negative for me. And yes, it is in ways, like it definitely is in ways in terms of I'm on this beautiful, beautiful network of community recruiters, Recruitment United, that have been so super supportive to me in starting out this business. And like we were talking before, some old school recruiters are, a bit set in their ways, but this new breed are just have been so welcoming and so
mm,
they've really been supportive of a newcomer kind of coming in, and the things they've taught me and the lessons I've learned through them and the time they've given me has been so invaluable. So it's crazy good. So whilst I haven't been a recruiter before, it's kind of a superpower for me as well
yeah,
because it's my USP, and being both the client and candidate and being in their shoes, I know what they're looking for. And I know I mentioned that before, but this is really, I really am able to focus on their needs and how best to service them. And I don't conform to those set in the ways thinking, and this freshness and dynamic thinking that I bring is what I do, and it's how I find awesome marketers. So for me, that's all been brilliant. But there's certainly lots and lots of pros in starting my own business. And for me, I guess one of the biggest ones is as a role model for my kids, showing them that you can pivot in life, using that pivot word that you mentioned before. And kind of how important it is to follow your passions and find what truly makes you happy as a human being. So what you're able to build and achieve on your own with a bit of elbow grease and a bit of commitment and dedication and genuine belief in yourself is hopefully really inspiring to them. So it's also humbling to have this brilliant 20 plus year marketing network behind me that are truly backing everything that I do and that are bending over to support. So, I probably wouldn't have done it without them. So, and then flexibility in my day now. I no longer miss out on going to those school events that are really important to my kids. And I'm able to, be on the sideline cheering them on. I do scream very loudly at cross countries and aths. They have told me I'm not allowed to face paint, but I am still allowed to scream. So that's something, right? But it's these events that really matter to them. And I'm so lucky to be part of them now, because there was moments that I missed that as a mum, you always kind of have that guilt in the back of your mind. But I really genuinely cherish the luxury of that flexibility. So I'm also accountable now for my own success, right? So my success is a direct correlation of the work that I put in. And that's both scary, but also motivating and rewarding. So for me, as I said before, marketing mix is me. It's my brand, and I can now be unashamedly authentic. And there is really something very liberating in that for me. I'm not having to run my ideas by anyone. I'm not having to wait for sign-offs or approval. The buck stops with me, and I'm at a time in my life where I love that, and that's really empowering. So, and then I guess the other point that I want to say about running my own business is that most importantly, I'm adding real value to my clients and my candidates, and that makes me super happy.
Yeah, it's so interesting, the word liberation there, and it's, as you said, it's something that I feel as well. And I guess it's, the other side of the same coin. To someone else, it might feel heavy, it might feel overwhelming, but actually, I, like you, find it very liberating that actually it is just me, and I get to make these decisions and make these calls and just, as you said, be myself. It's funny, I was just thinking when you were talking about that, that sort of authenticity piece, that it's not that long ago. It's probably 5, maybe slightly more than 5 years ago. I can very distinctly remember actually using this terminology of there being like a work version of me and then like a real life version of me. And they were, more or less the same person. But there were certain bits that I would just be like, no, work me doesn't need to talk about that, or, work me doesn't do that, or work me doesn't share that part of their lives, or whatever it was. And it sounds quite silly to say it now, but I genuinely felt like that. That was, that was just the work version. And then there was the actual me version. But of course, that is completely gone now, because there's nowhere. To be fair, I wouldn't want to do that anymore either. But equally, when it's you, just you, there's nowhere to hide, is there? It's kind of, this is me. This is what I'm doing.
Hey, this is me, all my glory.
Exactly. This is what I bring, like it or not.
Yeah.
Final question, Kym. It's always the final question here, and that is, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
Can I say Tats Lotto numbers for last weekend?
You can, yeah.
That'd be nice. Yeah, I thought long and hard about this one, because look, then it ended up being really that my authentic self is enough. And I think we've touched on this a lot. And it was a great segue what you just said then, right? That I am more than enough, and being vulnerable and putting yourself out there is scary. It absolutely is scary, but it's 100% worth it. And I would tell myself to be brave and take calculated risks, because if there's no risk, there's no reward. And life is short. It's so short. So do what makes you super happy and follow those passions. Surround yourself with amazing human beings and put yourself in positions where you really add value and you feel good about yourself. So, yeah, that's it.
That's awesome.
That's me.
And as well, I think with that, it be you and put yourself out there. I think the other advantage of that is that then the people that you attract into your life are there for the right reasons, because they actually are there for the real you, not some version, not some projection of you that's kind of half you.
Yeah.
And the same with your successes as well, that they're your successes. They're not some vague version of you that's kind of not really you that achieved that. It's you. And I think there is, as you said, something incredibly satisfying in that, and knowing that you did that. Like that was you. So great answer. I love that. Thank you.
We should give ourselves both give ourselves a bit of a pat on the back. And
Absolutely.
I hope you're listening to all of this, because I think you're doing an incredible job too. So
thank you. Yeah, but I agree with your point as well, that it is scary, and it's something that I talk to my clients about as well. Being more visible and kind of putting yourself out there, and it's not an easy thing to do. I think it doesn't come naturally to everyone, and just that kind of. I think sometimes people look at people that do it and do it well and assume that they're not scared of it. But that's not the truth at all. But they are scared of it. They're just doing it anyway. And I think that's a useful point to make, because if you assume that it's only the people that aren't scared that are doing it, then you'll never do it, because we're all scared. We're just pushing
we're all
through
scared.
it. Exactly.
We're all
just
trying
pushing
to push
through it.
Yeah. Correct. Well said. Totally agree.
Thank you, Kym. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat, and very on brand, being so open and honest and vulnerable about your story. I love it. Thank you.
Oh, Emma, it has just been such a pleasure. Thank you for, making podcasts not so scary for me. Maybe I'll do more now in the future.
You're on a roll now, right? You can.
Here I come, Will.
Go forth
on podcasts. It has been just so lovely spending time with you, Emma. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome.